Vedanta doesn't give you something you already don't experience. It helps you understand your experiences of life, come to more and more subtle aspects until you reach the subtlest of the subtlest, which is Jyotisham Jyotihi, light of all lights. The self is already evident, it is shining. You don't need a means of knowledge to reveal to you your own existence. It is pure awareness. Neti Neti is what is the first methodology of taking away what you are not, you discover what I am. It is like the wave in the ocean saying, first of all, I'm not the wave, I'm not this, I don't have this form, I'm not going to die, I'm not going to crash on this shore. And what does the wave recognize? I am water. All waves are water. But water is more than the wave. Swami Dayananda was very clear about it. Wherever this knowledge of oneness is unfolded, it is Vedanta. Mind doesn't generate consciousness. Consciousness lights up the mind. In our Aarti, we say that, Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. When we wave the Aarti flame, the sun doesn't shine there, the moon doesn't shine there, the stars don't have any independent shine without that one light. Through mindfulness practices, meditation practices, you develop an inner space between you and the mind, and that can help in day-to-day activities. But that inner space should ultimately translate into your discovery of yourself to be absolute space. Whatever condition the body, mind, senses is in does not affect Atma. Because it's a different order of reality. Paramartika Satyam. You recognize I'm playing a role. It is only a costume that is worn by Atma. Vasam Sijirna Niyata Vihaya. It's going to be thrown off like old clothes, Krishna says in Gita. See, that's why Swami Dayananda used to say something very beautifully when asked, how do we know when we have spiritually, progressed or evolved? He used to give the answer, and people were expecting, if I sit for meditation for 6 hours, or I can do all of this, practices for a long length of time. But he said something very beautiful. He said, when your transactions become easier, Shravanam is working. Again, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, in beautiful verses, he brings in the vision of a jnani, where a jnani's experience of the world will be eyes open, he recognizes consciousness. Eyes closed, he recognizes consciousness.
Hari Om Swamini Ji.
Hari Om, Namaste.
How are you doing?
Doing very well, thank you. Looking forward to having a discussion on this podcast.
So nice of you to come back again on this podcast.
I've been looking forward to, going more into more depth of Vedanta with you. And I think what we have chosen as a topic will be of a lot of benefit for seekers who are actually doing self-inquiry. It is a very beautiful verse that we are selecting.
Absolutely. So let's just dive straight into the text and then we can treat the questions as they come.
So maybe I will just chant it. It's a very beautiful, just one verse, but it's a beautiful in Sanskrit to hear it as well. It is Eka Shloki, the text, which means literally one verse. And it's written by our great Adi Shankaracharya. And within this one verse, he reveals Aham Brahmasmi, the whole Mahavakya, I am that one truth, that one self. So we'll see the methodology and we'll see the progression as we enter into the discussion. But let us just chant this. Kim jyotistava bhanumanahani me Ratrau pradipādikam Syadevam ravidipadarshana vidhau Kim jyotirakyahi me Chakshustasya nimilanadi samaye Kim dhir-dhiyo darshane Kim tatrahamato bhavan paramakam Jyotistadasmi prabho. It's just very nice to chant these verses. Traditionally, the students memorize the verses first before they understand the meaning. So
Mm.
you always have it with you, throughout your life. The verse comes back when you need it in your life, and you're doing the inquiry, or even some challenging situations. Sometimes the verses pop up like that. So it's always nice to do the chanting as well. Uh, so, just to give the essence of the verse, in this Eka Shloki, Adi Shankaracharya gives the entire synopsis of Vedanta. That's the beauty of it. It is called only Eka Shloki, but within it, it has the methodology of this Drik seer scene analysis. We call it Drik Drishya. There is a text which is a separate text which is actually entitled The Seer Scene Analysis by Vidyaranya. Very famous, you must know of it. But here in this shloka, it is a dialogue again between the guru and the shishya, the teacher and the disciple. So the teacher asks a few questions, and the disciple answers those questions. They seem very simple, actually, the questions themselves. On the surface, they're very, very rudimentary, very simple. But when you go through the shloka at the end, you start seeing, it makes people think, oh, then what lights up the mind? What lights up the very thoughts? So you go into depth. That's what the guru does, actually. Takes you on a journey from the gross to the subtle. So you see that in all the Shastra, the texts, there's always a movement from the gross, what is perceptible, to what is the most subtle. And the most subtle in Vedanta is, of course, the self Atma, self revealing consciousness, that self evident truth that brings everything else to light. And the beautiful thing, again, in this shloka, uh, it's a very subtle point. The disciple is taken to a place where he cannot see anything differently. He's taken to the place where he recognizes that only the self can be the one self-revealing light of all lights, which reveals all other lights, in fact. So we'll see the symbolism of light as well, because that comes up a lot, and that was one of your questions.
Would you like to just go line by line and just once go through the entire synopsis of the verse?
Yeah. So first he asks, Kim Jyotis Tava Banuman Ahani Me Ratro Pradipadikam. Here it is a technique for self-inquiry. He asks, what provides you with light in life? So there's again, as I said, a very rudimentary, easy question to answer. And the disciple gives the normal answer anybody would give. He says, by day, the sun provides us light. And by night, there is a lamp. So in those days, obviously, they didn't have electricity, but we can say, electricity provides us with light. So this is very simple. In the daytime, our vyavaharika reality, our transactional reality, how we interact with the world, all our day-to-day work, everything we do, what brings that daytime to light? We say daytime. Daytime is because of sunlight. So sun provides the light for our transactional reality during the daytime. And all activities come to light. We don't even recognize it. Half the time, we're so involved. We say waking, we're awake now. But what a beautiful thing, this whole day and night is because of one entity called the sun. The sun, our movement around the sun actually makes day and night for us, and time is made from that. So that's why he's called Dinakaraha. Sorry, this is by the side. Dinakaraha, the maker of the day, actually one of the Sanskrit names for Lord Sun. So the sun provides light that is very obvious during the day. And then what provides at night? It is lamp or some artificial light. We need some artificial lighting to provide that light during the night times, during the evening hours. So light, by essence, it has no taste, it has no color, it has no touch, it is formless, right? So that is another reason why light is used as an analogy to explain this consciousness, even though light itself is something created, it is an effect. But light is very useful as an example to explain how it reveals other things. So light reveals other objects. By itself, nothing reveals it. Objects cannot reveal the light, but light can reveal the objects. So this is another way of understanding how consciousness functions. In its presence, everything is revealed, but the things that it reveals cannot reveal the light, because it is a very revealer. And this is so how do you know there is such a thing as sunlight, if you ask? Because the very reason you see objects and people and transactions, you recognize there is something as sunlight. So the proof of the light is not only in the sun, it is in the objects it reveals. So that is why, again, when we look at the mithya, when we call it mithya, the dependent reality, we need dependent reality to understand the independent reality, satyam. So mithya is there to understand satyam. So this is the way sun in the transactional reality, the sunlight becomes a example for self-revealing nature. The nature of sun is light. The nature of sun is to lend light. It doesn't do anything to emit, it doesn't do anything. Very nature, in the presence of the sun, objects are lit up. So the objects, this is the key thing to note, objects cannot reveal the sun, but sun can reveal the objects. Then he goes on to say, what is that light that sees these lights? So these are luminaries. So if we take, in Swayam Jyoti Brahmana, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, very similar questions are asked there, to Yajnavalkya. So here he says, what is that light that serves, when the sun has set, what is the light that serves for man when the sun has set? So he goes to moonlight. So there's a few more steps in that. He says moonlight reveals in the night, at transactions, and then by the light of the moon he does his transactions. There they go further steps, but here in this shloka, Adi Shankaracharya says, what is the light that sees these lights, these luminaries? So the disciple obviously has done some studies, so he doesn't take much time. He says the eyes. The eyes reveal the sun and the moon. Without the eyes, the sun and moon don't also come to light, right? So the sense organs, when we see one sense organ in the Shastra, it stands always for all the sense organs. So light can also be in the sense of your hearing power. Light is also in the sense of power, not only illumination, sense of power as well. The power of my ears, the light streaming out through my ears reveals objects of sound. The light streaming out through my nose reveals objects of smell. So like this, the light that comes from my skin reveals objects of touch, and the light coming from my tongue reveals objects of taste. So light is also on the level of other senses because it reveals objects of the world. So the five senses are they're called the gateway. They're the jnanendriya. So they're the entry gates for knowledge of the external world. And we have the karmendriyas, which are the exit gates. How I respond to the stimulus of the external world are the organs of activity. But he says here, without sense organs, the world is there, but it cannot be revealed. So eyes and the other sense organs become a jyoti. They also become a light because they reveal the world. So beautiful, you can see the step now. The world is revealed because of the sun and because of the moon. And the very luminaries that reveal the world are revealed by my eyes, by my sense organs as well. And then he asks another step. He says, what is the light that illumines the eye? So again, here the Shishya says immediately, without pause, the intellect. So intellect here uses the word intellect, but it includes the mind, the antakarana, we can say, because knowledge takes place in the intellect, but through the mind. So one level we bring in as well the manaha aspect of thinking. The mind, see, the sunlight can only reveal the world. The eyes can reveal the sunlight, but what reveals the eyes? Something reveals, something knows the condition of the eyes. Something has to back the eyes for the eyes to reveal sunlight,
Mhm.
right? So if the eyes are staring in a certain direction and the mind does not back the eyes, then knowledge does not take place in buddhi. Because eyes, that's what we say. Oh, that person has such a blank stare. He just looks like he's. And when you ask the person, oh, did you see that? He said, oh, I didn't see it. Although his eyes are open, he's looking at the object. Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. And then you ask, where were you? Oh, sorry, my mind was elsewhere. People talk like this, but they don't see. Vedanta doesn't give you something you already don't experience. That's the beauty of it. It helps you understand your experiences of life. But experiences that we take very, nonchalantly, we take it, we don't even give a second thought to what we say and how we interact in the world. Vedanta helps you to go more into depth. So when I say, oh, I was not there, I was somewhere else, what does that mean? Who was that someone? That mind was somewhere else. So when mind does not back the senses, knowledge cannot take place in the intellect. So the object can never reveal, as I said, the rule is the object can never reveal the illuminating factor. The eyes cannot reveal the mind, but the mind can reveal the eyes. So the eyes and the other sense organs become objectified by the mind. And mind consequently brings in intellect, because intellect is where knowledge takes place. Intellect is that I thought, that claims the knowledge, right? I see, when you say, I see, that I has to back the eyes for object. I see the tree. The tree is there, illumined by the sun. I see the tree. Buddhi backs the mind, backs the eyes, backs the sunlight illuminating the object. So there's not only just one process, it happens so automatically, we can't see this process. So this is where he goes into one more step. We don't end up just with the intellect and the thought. So intellect is nishchayatmika antahkarana vritti, which is the thoughts of definiteness, the thoughts of knowledge. He says, what is that which knows the intellect? His his sentence here, final question. And the Shishya has obviously done a lot of Shravanam. He has studied. He says it is the I. It is the I. So this I that he's talking about is not the I that we usually take ourselves to be. This I that he is saying reveals the intellect is the source of that I, ahankara, that egoic sense of individuality that we take ourselves to be. This I is the self, and that's what he says. That is the light of all lights, because that reveals the very intellect. The intellect and the mind, which are a bundle of thoughts, are also objectified by that I, by that self. So the self becomes the illuminator of illuminators. Everything is dependent on the light of the self to come to light. Nothing is Swayam Jyoti. Doesn't shine by itself. And that's why the Guru says, therefore you are the light of lights. You may not know it, but he recognizes it. The Shishya is obviously an adhikari. He knows, he's already prepared. Immediately he says, truly, verily, I am that. Tat, I am that. Aham Brahmasmi. I know I am that. So this is the very beautiful small verse, just to give you a small summary of what is being said. But it is the whole of self-inquiry here to help you to go from the gross self that you identify with to come to more and more subtle aspects until you reach the subtlest of the subtlest, which is Jyotisham Jyotihi, light of all lights.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for explaining it. A few questions come to my mind, and we'll come to the self
yeah,
illumination part of it. So, the first three steps which you mentioned are fairly straightforward,
yeah,
right? And across all traditions, even science has a fairly simple definition. Photons reach our eyes, neurons fire,
yeah,
images, right, visualized, and it's the same whether it's a hearing, sound, right? Everything is somewhere you become aware of it. The fourth step, which is a uh, the premise that there is something which is aware of the intellect,
mm,
and b that something is not your intellect or another function of your mind.
mm,
Um, how does one make the step from the first three ones, which are in the broader scope of our usual knowledge,
yeah,
into this one, and then we come to realize that this is the illuminator of everything?
yeah. So that is where pramana is very much needed. As I said, the objects cannot reveal what is the source of their being lit up, right? They
Mm,
cannot reveal what is lighting them up. So we see that. So if the intellect is being lit up by something, it cannot reveal that. It is already self revealing, it is lighting up the very intellect.
mm,
So something has to be external to reflect the reality of the self to the one who wants to see, the one that wants to know. So who is doing the inquiry first? It is the ahankara, the I that's doing the inquiry. Who am I when you ask? That is the I that is identified with the currently with the body mind sense complex. That I is uh, it wants to find out, discover the source of I.
mm,
So to discover the source of I needs an external valid means of knowledge. It cannot, like the eyes, the physical eyes, cannot look at themselves. They can't reveal themselves. I need a mirror, external, for me to see my own eyes. So that's where Vedanta, it is, it becomes a little complex in that way that you need to have Shraddha, a commitment pending discovery in an external means of knowledge. And that external means of knowledge has to be different from the sense organs, has to be different from the mind, has to be different from the intellect, because they don't have access to that which lights them up. So that is where Shastra becomes a sixth means of knowledge, Shabda Pramana. The very words of Vedanta, they don't give you knowledge. In fact, we say it is a Brahma Vidya, a self knowledge. We say all these. In fact, it is a means of knowledge to remove ignorance, because the self is already evident. It is shining. You
mm,
know you exist. No one in this world need ask anybody else, do I exist? Do I exist? You know you exist. How do you know you exist? You don't need a means of knowledge to reveal to you your own existence. It is pure awareness. So that is the meaning of self-evidency. The
mm,
very fact that you know I am is self-evidency. You don't need anybody to tell you. You don't need a book to tell you. The only thing the pramana needs to tell you is what you are. You don't know how you exist. You know you exist, but the confusion is I am, and that adjectives are added on, right? I exist as the physical body, then that is one level of erroneous mistake. I exist as the mind. I identify with the mind. I identify with the prana. So that's why we do this Panchakosha Viveka also, the five sheaths, it is mistakes I commit on five levels. I commit the mistake of identification with the physical body, with the pranic body, with the manomaya kosha, like this. So, same way, the Shastra is a means of knowledge to dissolve your ignorance. It makes you see First of all, by seeing what you are not. Can I be this physical body? So neti neti is what is the first methodology of actually taking away what you are not. Taking away what you are not, you discover what I am. But then there's an issue, because saying I'm not that, then you're making two already, right? Then I'm not that, I'm this. So it becomes a form of disassociation unless you claim back what you first took away. So eventually, Vedanta knowledge is that you claim back the body, mind, senses is I, but I am much more than the body, mind, senses.
Hmm.
It is like the wave in the ocean saying, first of all, I'm not the wave, I'm not this, I don't have this form, I'm not going to die, I'm not going to crash on the shore. The wave doing the inquiry, and what does the wave recognize? I am water. I am water. All waves are water. But water is more than the wave. Wave is water. Water is more than the wave. But the wave is swallowed in water. I claim back that. I'm not just water. I'm the form of wave. Water can take any form. So this is the inquiry that's done. We need an external means of knowledge in order to discover that self which is already self-revealing.
And the premise that we need an external means of knowledge, as also which I think we see in Drigdrishya Viveka also, that the seer and the seen cannot be the same. All of these come from Shastra Pramana. Is that correct?
Yes, or some see Shastra. When we understand Vedanta, Swami Dayananda used to say, anywhere where this oneness is unfolded is called Vedanta. When we limit it to only, oh, it has to be in this text, that text,
Mm.
Swami Dayananda was very clear about it. Wherever this knowledge of oneness is unfolded, but there's a teaching methodology that is available in the Upanishads and in our texts. That is the uniqueness. But wherever it is unfolded, it is Vedanta. There is nothing different there. So Shastra is, the means of knowledge to reveal the oneness through first understanding that you are the limitless self. You are not confined to the limitations of the body, mind, senses.
Right. So why I asked was because, as you would be familiar, in the Western thought of consciousness studies,
Yeah.
uh, one of the key contentions which they want to make is that consciousness is generated by the mind, and how it is generated and when it is generated is obviously it's not there now. But
Yeah.
one of the key premises which they want to project is that it's being generated by the mind. The step here is it's prior to the mind. So,
Mm.
for somebody who comes from that kind of a background, it would require an immersion into the Shastras before they can see this side, or is there another experiential method there?
I think they need some help to do self-inquiry. I mean, Descartes himself, a great French philosopher, he started first with, I think, therefore I am.
Mhm.
But he changed that after doing some inquiry. Maybe he had some help to do inquiry, but he changed it to, I am, therefore I think.
Mhm.
See, that is the what Shastra reveals. Even the mind is dependent reality. Mind cannot function on its own. Mind doesn't generate consciousness. Consciousness lights up the mind.
Mm.
Very thinking capacity. Without consciousness lighting up the mind cannot function, it cannot think. So ultimately, with a little self-inquiry, even the greatest philosophers, they will see the mind is redundant without consciousness lighting it up. So again, as I said, whether it comes from the Upanishads or the texts that we have, or whether there have been great masters also, we have to say all over the world, people have come to recognize the truth. So we
Mm.
cannot just limit it. We can say only in this country or that country. India, of course, is great like that because it's produced great seers, visionaries, and people who have discovered the self. Because there's actually a lineage, there is a parampara, the traditional methodology of unfoldment. It is a communicable knowledge. It is still surviving in India to this day and in this lineage. So that is the uniqueness. But there are many people who have uh, probably even heard Tat Tomasi or you are that. Just hearing once, they've been ready. Mind is already prepared, so they've got it. The mind, when it's ready, it can just see immediately.
Right. So we'll move on to the practices in a bit, but something which we started on was this Swam Jyoti or self illuminating aspect. Why is it so important in Vedanta? Because we see the mentions of it again and again.
So the self illumination is an important thing in revealed by our Upanishads, because everything else is an object of illumination. It is illuminated by something. If there was not one
Mm,
final illuminator, then it would go into infinite regression. It's the same as the cause effect in the universe. We say eventually there's one final cause, that is the causeless cause. Beyond
mm,
that, there is no more cause. In the same way, we say here, beyond this, there's no more light. Because if that cause had another cause, then it is going back to infinite regression. So, what is that illuminator which doesn't need illumination? There is one thing that illuminates everything, and everything else has borrowed light. So that's another idea, one of the questions you ask as well. Everything borrows its light from that one light.
mm,
It is all level of borrowing. So that self-illuminate, self-evidency, self-revealing consciousness, evident, self-revealing, all of these words come into the picture to indicate that this light is the light of all lights, Jyotisham Jyotihi. We see in the Upanishad itself, which signifies that it is the one that illumines all the other lights that illumine other things. So they're all anubhati. In our in our arti, we say that na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. When we wave the arti flame, the sun doesn't shine there, the moon doesn't shine there, the stars don't have any independent shine without that one light that lights up the luminaries. And you're actually saying, what does this little light compare to that light of all lights? I'm waving this tiny flame in front of the light of all lights, which lights up all the lights.
mm.
So it is the ultimate luminary. It illumines everything.
So in this one verse, you said the student is obviously adhikari and he's ready. So as soon as the teacher asks, what is it that lights up the intellect? He or she says, I. But for most of us, I think probably all of us, if you ask them, what is it that lights up the mind? It's almost a dead end question because
Yeah.
A, we have never explored, and B, it's the ultimate reversal of our sight. What is
Yeah.
it behind it? So, how does one distinguish between what is the mind's function and the awareness which is illuminating it?
So that is where also we have, even in Drikdishya, many texts go into the different states of experience as well to understand this, to show that without the mind, without the thoughts, without the I thought, even, which you take yourself to be so much, we take that to be the only reality. Without these thoughts and the very I thought, I still continue to exist. And that state is deep sleep state.
Hmm.
So, in deep sleep state, if we examine that, for people who are not able to see that the mind itself cannot be the ultimate illuminator, that itself is illuminated, in deep sleep state, we ask the question, where are you? Where are you first? Where are all your issues, your problems, everything that you had in waking state? Where is the very thinking in deep sleep state? Where are all the connections that the very children that you're so attached to in waking state, you forget totally when you go to deep sleep, right? All the relationships also dissolved. Everything totally resolved in deep sleep state, but you continue to exist. Minus mind, you exist.
Hmm.
And how do you know you exist? How do you know you are there? Because The Shastra gives another logic. When you wake up, somebody asks you, "Oh, how did you sleep?" You are able to say, "I slept well" or "I didn't sleep well." You're able to recount your experience in the deep sleep state.
Mm.
It is your ability to recount your experience in deep sleep state means you exist in deep sleep minus the mind, and only the prana is taking care of the body functions. But there is no thought there. The I itself is not there. You as I is not there, but you as awareness continues to exist. It is like when we enter deep sleep, you know, when you go into a dark room, when you and somebody shouts and you can't see anything. What does somebody shouts to you? What do you see? I see. I see nothing. You say that I don't see anything. I don't see anything really means what? I see the absence of everything.
Mm.
So when you are in sleep, you are lighting up absence of everything. You as awareness light up the absence of everything. And in waking state, you light up the presence of everything because it comes to light because of light. There, the light is still shining. Light of consciousness is still shining because it lights up absence. So
Oh.
that is how you recognize this mind, uh, you know, by this vichara inquiry, you recognize that the mind cannot be you. There has to be something else. And that something is unfolded by the words of Vedanta. So when we come down to it, it is through the Shabda Pramana alone, the understanding or the assimilation of awareness is revealed to the individual.
So, I mean, what you mentioned is, I think, it's pretty well encapsulated whenever we talk of deep sleep, and the question is whether it is an absence of awareness or an awareness of absence. And if we are aware, and if we wake up and say, "I had a good sleep" or a bad sleep, then it thereby posits the thought that there is something beyond the thoughts. But that vichara of deep sleep, and this is what happens, how do we take it when the mind is fully active, especially in our day to day worldly life?
So, when we are very active in day to day worldly life, the vichara requires some space and time. So we
Mm.
won't be able to, always have this type of vichara in those times. When the mind is active, I would require, I think, practices. That's when practices come in useful. Practices such as mindfulness practice, objectifying one's thoughts, and these are all done as a daily meditation practice. So when that is done on a day-to-day basis of becoming even 10-15 minutes invested in watching your thoughts, observing your thoughts, then when the mind gets busy in the transactional world, as you say, all these days people are busier and busier with that, you are able to be more objective. It is not enlightenedly, you're not an enlightened objectiveness, that is different, but it is a practice. So it is a level of objectivity that you get, wherein the mind does not create too much disturbance for you. Whereas before, when you were totally identified with the thoughts, there was a lot of disturbance because whatever is happening to the mind is happening to the eye, it's lumped on the eye. But through mindfulness practices, meditation practices, you develop an inner space between you and the mind, and that can help in day-to-day activities. But that inner space should ultimately translate into your discovery of yourself to be absolute space, like space untouched by all the activities within space. The truth of the I should shift to that level of reality where you discover whatever condition the body mind senses is in does not affect Atma.
Mm.
Because it's a different order of reality. Paramartika Satyam. That is called the shift of the I, that is slowly that space, that relative space one develops becomes absolute space. Then you don't have to worry about anything because you recognize I'm playing a role. It is only a costume that is worn by Atma, and that is going to be, Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. It's going to be thrown off like old clothes, Krishna says in Gita.
Mm. Since you mentioned mindfulness, are there any particular practices which you often recommend to your students?
I think, the modern mindfulness, there are many people practicing that now. Simple observation of thoughts without judgment.
Mm.
We also have that in our guided meditations. Swami Dayananda's app is there. There are beautiful guided meditations. People can go there and access those. Swamiji, many of them helps you to be objective to your thoughts. So this objectivity is developed when you don't judge or label the thoughts. This moment I start labeling and judging, I'm connected to the thought. This is a bad thought. This is a good thought. Thoughts are just thoughts. So the mindfulness practice is based a lot on non-labeling, non-judging, seeing the thoughts like you're seeing a movie, like just on the screen of the mind, you're watching these scenes change. It could be a horror scene 1 minute, could be a comedy, could be a love story next minute, but you are totally, untouched by that. You're just watching it. If you grab onto something, it remains. If you can remain as an observer, it goes by itself. So the whole key is to just allow the thoughts to be. Don't resist yourself. Don't resist the thoughts. That's another mistake we make. We resist thoughts we think we should not have. I should not have this thought. Why am I having these thoughts? This is a negative thought. The moment I do that, I'm actually attaching myself to the thought. So I don't judge the thoughts. There's no good thought. There's no bad thought. Thoughts are just thoughts. That is the key in mindfulness practice. If you understand thoughts are just thoughts, they have no power on their own unless you give power. They just come and they go. And in that watching of them coming and going, you are free. You are simply the simple conscious being, just aware of everything happening without reaction.
The second question is something which often comes up. I mean, I've seen it come up multiple times. Is whenever the observer is mentioned or the witness consciousness is mentioned, there is a knee jerk reaction which sort of says this is a passive approach to life. Because unless you're grabbing, actively thinking, I am doing everything, I have to go further than the others, you're not right. You're not moving ahead in the world, and you're not doing all that you're doing. How do you look at this conflation of being passive and versus being a very active but a complete witness observer of thoughts?
Generally, when one enters more into the spiritual pursuit, that activity and ambition and everything automatically you find it dies down. Because the teaching itself makes you see what you're really going after. So Purushartha becomes clear, which means the goal of, why we are here. That starts becoming clearer. So that goal starts going up on the list of all your goals. So all the goals, they have not disappeared, but they become less and less prominent in life. So acting, we cannot, when we're acting and everything, when we talk about acting with space and everything, these meditations and mindfulness practices help you become less reactive, I would say. That's the
Mm.
key in life. They help you watch your reactions. They give you, where you used to blow up immediately. Maybe when you do this for a regular time, you become a calmer personality. People are able to observe the changes in you. You become less reactive. But living in the Vyavaharika world, in the transactional reality, having to face, that is why Krishna says the best thing to practice is karma yoga lifestyle. So if there is still desires to be fulfilled, there is still a need there to achieve certain things, gain certain things for one's own, uh, happiness and peace, you think, then Shastra also says nothing wrong with that. As long as you pursue in line with dharma, ethical norms, nothing wrong with that. So we cannot confuse the two realities. That's what I'm trying to say. If I
Hmm.
understand the question correctly, Paramarthika reality is always there. It underlies this Vyavaharika. It underlies the transactional reality. This is a dependent reality, what we are functioning in. But if the mind still feels the pressure to achieve, to gain, to do, to be in the world, it is better to be in the world and do all of those things as a karma yogi if you're interested in moksha ultimately. um, then I think confusing the the two aspects. I hope I'm understanding the question properly. Maybe I'm not fully.
I, th- I think you answered one part of the question, but as you mentioned towards the end, that the transactional reality and the absolute reality are at different levels, and some part of our confusion comes in trying to intermix both of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, that's
But also, when we talk of the witness consciousness or the pure awareness or watching our thoughts, would you say that it's possible and uh, also good and efficient to take this mindset into the real world where you still want to achieve? And one answer to that you gave, that if your mind is still towards that achievement kind of a race, look at karma yoga and do the stuff which is actually in dharma. But a lot of us, and right, the vast majority of people are in a professional life, in a personal obligatory life, and they have to do stuff. So would you say it is possible to take this mindset which is being derived from the paramarthic satya and take it into the transactional world?
Definitely, as I said, the very Shravanam uh, lifestyle, whether Krishna says, Jnana Yogi or Karma Yogi,
Mm,
there are two lifestyles that one can choose in life. Karma Yogi is the one who is in the world, in employment, with the family, grihastha, ashrama, all of that. So they are given, they're in that lifestyle. But moksha, they're equally mumukshus, they're equally after liberation, freedom from the cycle of sorrow, whatever you want to call. There are many, many descriptions of moksha, but ultimately it is freedom from sense of limitation and
mm,
smallness and total self-acceptance. So whether you're a jnana yogi or karma yogi, you're in that. And both are doing shravanam. That is the key here. Both lifestyles, you continue your Shravanam, that listening to words of Vedanta, that constant exposure to the words. Knowledge is access, both have access to the knowledge. The only difference is when you're very busy in the transactional reality, there is no space to do the vichara. You need a
mm,
relative, you can imagine how will you sit in a business meeting and saying, who am I? What am I?
mm,
It is impossible because the mind has to be focused and we cannot feel guilty. So mind, where the mind is, it should be focused. So there is a time one has to set aside for this pursuit. When one is very busy in the world, a certain time has to be set for this pursuit without the influence of cell phones and all this other external sources of disturbance. Keeping all that aside to do this. And definitely it will impact the day-to-day life. As I said, one discovers oneself becoming freer and freer within and not touched by the results of action. So the very
mm,
action becomes the joy. Whatever you're doing becomes the joy. The results are going to come anyway. Whether you wish this to happen or that to happen, the results are not in our hands. Krishna says very clearly. They're going to appear, manifest as per an order. That order we are not aware, but enjoy the process more and more. I bring in that uh, joy of Shravanam, that knowledge of Shravanam. I find my transactional dealings also become easier. See, that's why Swami Dayananda used to say something very beautifully when asked, how do we know when we have spiritually, progressed or evolved? He used to give the answer, and people were expecting, if I sit for meditation for 6 hours, or I can do all of this, practices for a long length of time. But he said something very beautiful. He said, when your transactions become easier, Shravanam is working.
Mm.
So when your transactional reality, how you're dealing with situations and people becomes easier, then Atma Vidya is blessing you. This knowledge is blessing you. So it does. It is not that it is two orders separately. This Paramarthika pervades the Vyavaharika because they're non-separate. But for a person who is totally committed, like a jnana yogi, to this knowledge, they have more chance because they're by themselves. They are not in the rat race. They dropped out of
Mm.
the rat race. So they have more time for self-inquiry and vichara, and more time for shravanam. That is what sannyasa is given for in our tradition, actually.
I think this is a very interesting and effective pointer. Are your transactions becoming easier?
Yeah,
And it's a
yeah,
good measure of, I mean, where we are
yeah.
going, or are
It's
we
a
genuine
beautiful
in our
measure.
efforts?
It is not like, it's not like, oh, have you become vegetarian? Are you able to sit for 6 hours meditation? How many pujas you do? Sometimes we confuse, what is the spirituality? We have a dichotomy.
Mm.
What is worldly? What is spiritual? And the beauty of Vedanta, and especially unfolded by Swami Dayananda, is that there's no dichotomy. Your material world is your spiritual world.
Mm.
Whatever you do, your activities, everything is for your spiritual life, your spiritual growth ultimately anyway. But I have to see what I'm able to do with with what I am, what the upadhi is, and what time I have in my life to invest. If I want to go full time into the pursuit, also there is a path given of
Mm.
renunciation for full time in this study and in this pursuit. But Shastra does not, say that grihastha people in that ashrama have no access to moksha. It says you have equal access. Krishna is very clear. So being in the world, you have more chance of antavkarna shuddhi, actually purifying the mind, which is a prerequisite for knowledge assimilation.
Something you mentioned earlier, when we do neti neti, I am not this, I am not that, that is not the end, because eventually you have to bring in the world, otherwise there are
Yeah.
two separate entities. How does that step happen? Because even experientially, I mean, in my personal experience, when you sit in mindfulness or meditation with a little bit of consistency, you can perhaps reach the stage where you're able to observe your thoughts, and you're able to observe once thoughts start dropping down, and you are getting the glimpse of who I am. But how do you include the world around you then? Because everything is one single consistent reality.
Yeah. So that ultimately the realization has to be that the essence of yourself is the same essence as Ishvara. Tattvamasi reveals that. And Ishvara includes the Jagat. So all three are resolved into one. The individual, the universe, and the Lord, right? At the moment, there are three different entities: the universe, the Lord, and myself. So if I understand my nature, it doesn't stop there, right? That awareness. I I understand my nature. I can sit there, absorbed in myself. Definitely, I can do that. But when I open my eyes, I see the world. I can't help it. I still
Mm.
see multiplicity. I see differences. I see all of that. How do I account for that? I'm the self, but that is where the knowledge helps you to see that my nature is non separate from the nature of every name and form that I see, that I observe. That is a cognitive understanding. Again, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, in beautiful verses, he brings in the vision of a jnani, where a jnani's experience of the world will be eyes open, he recognizes consciousness. Eyes closed, he recognizes consciousness. That is real truth, because if I keep that not me, then I'm again separating. The separation is needed at the beginning for the
Mm.
wave to recognize its water. It needs to do the vichara to recognize, oh, I'm not this, the foam on top of the water. I'm not this, I'm not going to break on the shore. So it recognizes I'm water. But if the wave looks around the ocean, other waves, it looks at other waves. Are they also not water? It recognizes other waves are also, whether they are large waves, small waves, whether any form of water is nothing but water. It also looks at the ocean. Ocean is like Ishvara. Before, it used to pray to that ocean, that small wave. Oh, look at the mighty ocean. So beautiful. I worship this ocean. And now, with the knowledge of its nature, it looks at the ocean and says, oh, ocean is also water. So ultimately, ocean gets resolved in water. Waves also get resolved in water because H2O is all there is.
Mm.
So the same way, consciousness is all there is. Open eyes, I recognize there is only one, that consciousness. Not that I don't interact with the multiplicity, but that mithya doesn't cease to bother me anymore because my vision is clear. Mithya, how can other waves disturb me if I know they're water? So it's just a name and form, rising in time, lasting in time, dissolving in time. Just like all of us, we arise, we have a birth date, we have an expiry date, we have a dash between our entry and expiry. All our life is in that dash, but we all are one on that intrinsic level.
Therein lies the keys to ultimate freedom.
That is the key, because as long as I don't, that is where many, neo-Advaitins stop with only the discovery of consciousness, the conscious entity of the individual. I am awareness, that's it. We go one step further with our traditional Vedanta unfoldment, saying you have to resolve the world into yourself.
Mm.
Whole world is dependent on you in the form of consciousness. That is true non-duality. Otherwise, it still remains dual.
Right. Since you mentioned neo Advaitins, we were having this discussion the other day also, the misconception which people have on Ishvara in our tradition. Could you spend a couple of minutes on why people misunderstand this concept of Ishvara?
So I think, again, Swamiji's words always come to mind. My guru, his always I remember because it was so much clarity he gave us. He always used to say, Ishvara is not a matter for belief, it's a matter for understanding. And the confusion only comes when there is a belief system. So in many, we see in many religions, everything, there's a belief in Ishvara. And the belief sometimes is blind belief, which can be fanatic as well, verging on fanatic. So there's no inquiry really. And when they're asked questions, or you ask such people who believe like this questions, they're not able to give logical answers to those people. And then it becomes, again, a source of antagonism, source of argument, source of even wars. So many wars are based on religious differences, understanding of Ishvara. In Shastra, Ishvara is very beautifully unfolded as the intelligent cause and the material cause of this whole universe. And this, see, with any object that you take, there is always, like, we'll take the usual Shastra example of this pot maker and the pot, right? So for a pot to come into shape, you need the intelligent cause of the pot maker. He has to know the dimensions of the pot, what the pot looks like. At the same time, pot maker by himself cannot bring the pot into existence. He needs a material, which is clay. So the material is clay. And in the examples that we have in this, in our transactional world, the intelligence and material always separate, like gold and goldsmith. Goldsmith brings, fashions gold into a form that people can wear or people can use. But the goldsmith is separate from the gold. So our rishis have gone, one step further by observing nature. And in Mundaka Upanishad, very famous verse, Yator nanabi srijate grinnate cha, they bring in the example of a spider weaving its own web. Because in this universe, the intelligence comes along with the material. The spider, as it weaves its own web, this whole material cause for the Jagat is revealed to be non-separate from the intelligent cause of the Jagat. So if Ishvara is revealed as the material and intelligence, then the question comes, where is he not? Not where is he? Where is he not?
Mm.
He is in everything and everyone as material cause and as intelligence. That's why we say all knowledge. So all knowledge means he is in the form of various orders we see. The physical order. Physics is Ishvara for us. Physics is study of the physical order, Ishvara. Biology, study of biological order, Ishvara for us. Chemistry, study of chemical order, Ishvara for us. So the various orders that pervade this universe, keeping the universe functioning, is the intelligence that all knowledge, Ishvara. And the material itself, where is he? Where is he not? If he is the material cause, he is in everything and everyone. That is why in India, the culture, you can worship anything. You go to villages, they take rocks, they take trees, they take any object. He can be invoked in any inanimate object. So-called inanimate objects are not inanimate ultimately for us. Even if we do a level of vichara scientifically, you see, everything is only vibration and frequency. Tesla, Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest, I think, modern rishis, scientist, he said, if you want to understand the universe, understand it in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So anything that you see is nothing but energy, ultimately, energy, frequency, vibration. But that is also resolved into consciousness. So ultimately, there is adhisthana, one basis for the whole Mithya Jagat. It is like an appearance virtual reality world we're living in. I always think that's a very good modern example. You have your glasses, you put your virtual reality glasses on, then you go through all the, you get so sucked in by that virtual reality world. You're going through all the ups and downs there, reacting. Soon as you take off the glasses, what happens? Oh my God, this was not as real as I thought it to be. So Ishvara, we can say a lot more, but I'm just, very briefly unfolding. He's revealed. That's where we need some Shraddha as well in the Pramana. He's revealed in the Veda as the non-different, efficient, and material cause of the universe. Non-different, intelligent, and material cause for the universe. And that is unfolded like this. So nobody can refute. Scientists cannot refute our understanding of Ishvara, because then they would refute their own laws.
So the mistake which we are making is pretty similar in what we think of ourselves as being the limited body mind complex. In the
Correct.
same
We
way with
limit.
Ishvara also, we have put in some
Yeah,
forms and we limit it right there. And
correct. And
obviously
then
every religion has their own forms. So
and then we fight with the forms. My form is greater than this form. It is a bit of a joke. I mean, we feel, according to Vedanta, because any form can be invoked as Ishvara. And these forms are all actually created by artists who have studied the shlokas and everything, descriptions of the forms. Who has created the forms ultimately?
mm,
We have attributed forms to the one, and we worship those forms, giving reality to the form. But in fact, the forms are there to help you understand the one formless. Forms always should help you recognize formless. That's why they're given.
mm, right. And to understand the one light behind it all.
The one light behind all forms and behind the functioning of all forms. That's in this shloka, going back to the shloka, you see there's levels of light, because the sun reveals on one level. Sun is also a revealer. Eyes also become revealers. Mind also becomes revealer. Buddhi, intellect, also revealer. But beyond those revealers is the revealer of the revealers,
Mm,
is the revealer, that is the light of all lights, which lends existence. It's like, I know it's a very, I always use this example, it comes to mind, but it's like frying pakoras.
mm,
When you have, you put the pan on the fire and you put the oil in the pan and then you put the pakora in the pan. But The original heat, does it belong to the saucepan or the frying pan? Does it belong to the oil? It belongs to the fire. So the frying pan borrows the heat from the fire. The oil borrows the heat from the frying pan. And pakoras borrow the heat from the oil. Each one being without heat by itself. So same way, the mind borrows consciousness, the light of consciousness from Atma. The eyes borrow the light from the mind, and the luminaries are lit up by the eyes themselves.
Right. And if we are too busy eating pakoras, we forget about the fire behind it all.
Yeah, correct.
It's been a wonderful session, Swamini. I think we covered a lot of stuff here. And it's also a beautiful verse which you shared. Before we end, is there anything you would recommend to people listening how they should take this verse and put it into practice? Should they do it separately from their mindfulness practice, or should they actually inquire into this verse, or should they chant it? How should they go forward with it?
Yeah. I think it is always beautiful to chant. I am a lover of chanting, especially Sanskrit shlokas and everything, because I find it gives you also, whether the understanding is there or not, there is a special power to chanting, and it gives you a relief. And they've done, again, scientifically a lot of research. I'm also very interested in seeing how sound frequency can affect your cellular structure, and also affect certain parts of your brain as well. So a lot of research is being done in this field. But along with the chanting, I can take some time in the day to see the beauty of myself. What I love about this verse is that it helps you recognize how beautiful you are as a human being, not because of what you have, what skills you possess, what talent you have, how much money you have, not because of that, but because there's a light in you that is shining constantly, lighting up everything that you do and see and hear, and all your transactions. And because of that light you are functioning, because of that light you speak, because of that light you think. So it is always wonderful to see that you are much more than you take yourself to be. So this verse helps you recognize that on a day-to-day basis. It can be taken up as a sadhana. See yourself for what you are. Don't limit yourself to this limitations of body, mind, senses, because what Adi Shankaracharya finally leaves us with is that you are much more than all of this.
I think that's a perfect way to end this session. Thank you so much, Swamini, and so much gratitude for you to take your time out and
I've
give us
enjoyed
this
very much.
wisdom. Thank you so much.
Namaste.